There's something happening in our education system that's not so hot at the moment. About 30 to 40% of children aren't getting a very good deal at the moment. So the kids that actually still remain in school, I want to talk a little bit about them too. And I want to think about them and think, are they getting everything they actually need to get out of the system? And we think about those who actually end up at the end of their school and career, and we think, are they getting what they actually need? And when they finish their school and career, are they getting what they actually deserve? When they finish school, are they leaving school being able to make the choice they want to make, and are they actually having the choices that they want to make and live the life that they need to make and to decide what that is they want to do with their career? So today I want to talk about the collateral damage that we have coming out of our education system and whose kids are they going to be? Are they going to be your kids or are they going to be my kids? So I'm Joanne, and I want to talk a little bit about when I was a student, first of all. When I went through school, it might have been that I looked like I was unengaged, or I looked like I was unmanageable, or I looked a little bit like I was uncontrollable. Which one of those things do you think I might have been? When you think about me now, do you think I was uncontrollable at school? Do you think I was a little bit unmanageable at school? Or do you think I was one of those students that was unengaged? Who can tell me which one I might have been? Unengaged? Was I a little bit wild maybe? Maybe I might have been a little bit uncontrollable. I definitely was unengaged. I used to be able to sit there in the classroom and I would sit there and look like I was perfectly engaged in my learning. But I would be there and I would sit there and I would answer the teacher whenever they asked me a question, and the answer would come out of my mouth because, you see, I'm female, and what can females do? Multitask. And lots of the times when we're learning, we can multitask. And so often our experience in school is that we can actually listen to what the teacher is doing and be totally bored out of our brains. And often, as we're going through school, what we're seeing so often happen is that kids get bored. And it wasn't until I became a teacher in the education system that I realised that I actually could do something differently in education. So I've been a teacher, I've also been a principal, I've been equivalent to a superintendent, and I've also been a national manager in the Ministry of Education in New Zealand. And what I've also done is I've actually been able to shift some of the challenges that we've had in our system by making a difference for students who have been underserved. And what we did was we looked at what actually makes a difference for kids who need to actually learn and be engaged in the system. So what I want to talk about is the collateral damage of that. I want to introduce you to somebody who made a really big difference in my life, and that was a student, and his name was Ben. Ben definitely came to me with a reputation of being unmanageable, uncontrollable, and unengaged. He already came to me like that. Hands up if you know somebody like Ben. He might be your own child, and he might be somebody that came into your classroom if you're a teacher. And we have so many of those students in our classrooms today. And often it's not because they actually are that, it's because the system has turned them into that. Because they come into our classrooms and they are bored. Because nobody has actually taken the time to actually ask them what it is they want to learn. Because they're being delivered a curriculum that has been designed by somebody who actually doesn't know them. They don't know who they are, and they don't know what it is they actually need to learn. So part of what we have to do as educators is actually start to think, who are these children and what is it that they actually need to learn? When they get delivered a curriculum that is designed by somebody in another place and gets given to them, it doesn't actually make sense anymore. Often when we talk to children, and in particular my little Ben, he actually had no interest in what was actually being delivered to him. He was really bright. He was able to read at grade level, he was able to write at grade level, he was able to write a research report like you wouldn't believe. He was incredible. He was so excited about everything to do with science and electricity that when I actually sat down and took the time to talk to him, he was unbelievably intelligent and could do so much. But he was getting grades that were so disgustingly low that he was designed and destined to fail. So when I actually talked to him, what a difference it made for his life. So Ben plus school equaled boredom. He told me that he couldn't wait till 3 o'clock when our school finished to get home and actually start real learning. And so many kids that I talk to, actually that's what happens to them. So the system is actually failing Ben, not Ben failing in school. So how do we look at the system in a different way, and what can we do differently inside our schools to make that difference for that 30 to 40% who are currently today struggling in our system? What did I do for Ben? I gave him an opportunity to think differently about his learning inside the school system. So Ben loved electricity, so what could we do for him? We gave him an opportunity to look at a project. He had an opportunity to start thinking about what could he do. He created 10 different learning centres, and he started to teach the children in his class about that. Now in those days, which was probably about 20 years ago, because I don't want to give my age away, he actually had the opportunity to start teaching those children about electricity. And I still remember to this day what he taught, because it excited me as well, because he was teaching something that he was passionate about. And the children learned about that. He took us on a field trip. He took us out to hydro dams. He took us out to wind farms. He took us out to places that he was excited about. And from that moment in time, the whole experience changed for him. He became engaged in learning, he became excited, and he was passionate about what he was doing. And I took the time to talk to him. So when I talk about system failure versus is it something wrong with our kids, it's actually the system, not the kids. Because when you talk about 30 to 40% of children failing all of the time, it's got to be the system. If we make a comparison to other sectors and we think about health, if we had 30 to 40% of people going into hospitals and coming out dead, would we start to think that there was a problem? If we had 30 to 40% of planes crashing every time they took off, would we think there was a problem? Would we do something differently? If we had 30 to 40% of your businesses failing annually, would we think there was a problem? We would do something differently. But every year we allow our system to let 30 to 40% of children come through the system and actually come out the other end without the education they need to live in today's society. So we actually have to look at what we are doing as a system. Now, it's not the kids' fault. It's not actually the teacher's fault. It's actually the whole system. We have to look at what we're doing and how we're setting it up. So what does the future hold? We have to change what we're doing for our kids, and we have to look at them as individuals, and we have to ask them what it is they need to learn. One thing that perplexed me for a long time was, why do we think every child needs the same set of information and the same content and the same knowledge? When we as adults, we go to work and we do different things most of the time. We don't have the same life, we don't have the same interests, and we don't have the same strengths or abilities. So why don't we spend time talking to our kids and finding out what they are interested in and teaching them in those areas? It's a kind of interesting way to think about learning, about trying to define what children's strengths are and develop those for them. It kind of is like when we used to think about develop your weaknesses and get stronger in those. But now we kind of look at it, how do we develop our strengths and get stronger and stronger in that area? So think about that from a curriculum point of view too. If we start to design our curriculum locally and think about what do children need individually, it kind of changes the whole game of education. So what could this future look like? What could we have in our schools? Schools could change from being what they look like with a teacher at the front or a teacher in the classroom with a lot of kids to maybe it could become like a learning hub where the future actually holds a space where there might be some adults, there might be some kids, because questions are now being asked. Do we need schools that actually start at, say, 4 or 5 or 6 years of age and finish at 18? Do we need universities the way they are now? We're starting to see online learning taking off. We're starting to see a lot of homeschooling, and we're starting to see a huge rise in private schooling, and a whole lot of people are starting to think about schooling in different ways. We're not seeing the normal schooling taking place. We're starting to see businesses saying, this isn't okay anymore, because a lot of the businesses are saying, you're turning out kids who are not suitable for the workforce. So we have to change what we're doing. So what would learning hubs look like? What do they need to be? What do they have? It's places where new and different ideas occur, where people can come and learn when they need to learn something. If they need to learn something, it will help them with their lives and actually help them to understand who they are, their place in the world, and how they fit in and how they can contribute to make the world a better place. We want to see it to be curious. We want to see people being interested in learning. We don't want to see people like me get to their 20s and be bored through school, or actually be able to sit there and smile and answer the questions and have content and knowledge that's static fill your mind, because you can get information anywhere. We want it to be able to acquire new knowledge and skills as you need it. And perhaps you go there when you can teach something that you're passionate about, because teachers need to be excited and passionate about what they teach as well. They don't necessarily want to be teaching something that they are bored by year after year as well. When they can teach something they're excited about, the passion that they share and bring to life actually gives the kids something exciting to be engage in and enjoy as well. People say, how do you actually do that? And you have time to do that? Of course you do. Because if you think about Ben, if I didn't take the time to talk to him at the beginning, he would have had another year of being unmanageable, uncontrollable, and unengaged. But just spending that 15 minutes engaging with him and talking to him about what he loved and how excited and passionate he could be, what a difference it made in that child's life. And that actually goes wider and beyond and beyond and beyond, because he actually then had an opportunity with his life to start thinking differently about learning. He didn't have to wait for the bell to go at the end of the day to be excited. So the time that you invest in their lives at that point makes such a difference. We do have the time to do that. We don't have the time to continually teach the same thing day after day when kids don't need it or want it. Integration. We have to integrate what we teach. If children don't understand and don't get excited about what we're teaching them and have meaning and sense of what it is that they're doing on a daily basis, it won't stick in their heads. As I said earlier, I still remember what Ben taught me. I still remember that electrons run through wires, because he put us in a circle and he made us run around the room, and he taught us that electrons run through the wires. Now, for somebody who's not really scientifically minded, I remember that. And that was many, many, many years ago. And I think that because I experienced it, he reminds me of that all of the time. Cross-curricular. I used to have to go, when I was at high school, through different classrooms and timetable around and move through each room. But when I became a teacher, I realized that was because it was an organizational thing, because it was something that made it easier for us as adults, not because it had made any difference for learning. So life isn't like a math problem or a reading problem or a social science problem. Actually, we live in the world as a whole person. So actually, we need to start bringing all of those subject areas together and actually teach children in real problems and real situations and in real life areas. So for that reason, I'm not really a fan of timetabling, because actually what it does is it creates a separation from reality. And we need to put children into real life situations so they understand that it actually isn't compartmentalized, because life isn't like that. I love project-based learning because I think it actually creates an opportunity for children to understand who they are and how they fit into the world, and then the second part is how they can contribute to it. It takes into account blended learning. You can use a different variety of that, and actually coming out with product-based learning as well. A little caution around blended learning. It's not just buying a curriculum that somebody else has written and putting it into the space. It's thinking about who the child is and actually creating an opportunity for them to learn. If we think about assessment, there's a lot of discussion around how do we actually let children know where they are in this space and learning and understanding. If you think about learning as finding out where you are in this world and how you fit in and what you need to learn next, assessment then is just any way or means of understanding whether you've known that you've actually understood that part. So assessment doesn't necessarily need to be a test. It can be, but it might be a conversation. It might be a piece of art. It might be a discussion. It might be a piece of writing. Or it might be an observation by a very talented teacher, just noticing that a child has actually recognised that they have understood something. So assessment doesn't have to be complex. It can be very, very simple, because it's just recognising you've understood something. Learning analytics is fantastic. It's making sense of new data. It's making sense of what's actually happening. With the influx of social media, it's actually helping us to understand with new data, I have to say it with an American accent, data, so you understand me, and understanding what's actually coming. It's giving real-time information for teachers to know whether students are actually engaged in learning. So this is a new phenomenon that's actually going to really help with the education and knowing whether kids are engaged or not. It's a really exciting time to be involved in education because there is no excuse for 30 to 40% of kids not being engaged in learning any longer, because we'll be able to know in real time whether or not they are learning and excited. So we no longer have any excuse to not engage children in learning. We have no excuse to not develop their own curriculum for them and what it is they need to learn. It's too exciting a time to not be involved with this. So the collateral damage that comes out of our system is only there because we haven't got the courage to actually change what it is we're teaching, and we haven't got the courage to stand up and say, those kids who are uncontrollable, unmanageable, and unengaged are only there because of the system, not because of the kids, the teachers, or us. Thank you.